So welcome to the panel session on Ardhanarishvar and the return of the Ardhanarishvar. This is the Festival of Bharat here in London, and we thought this will be a wonderful place and a setting to explore the divine masculine and the divine feminine from the perspective of the Dharmic tradition and India's understanding of the interplay between the two. So I have on the panel, I'm the token thorn amongst the roses, as it were, and we have representatives from a variety of paths, journeys and traditions, and as we proceed, each will be contributing a perspective on the subject from their own journey and their own understanding. So the concept of Ardhanarishvar, it's one of India's contributions. India is the fountainhead of a very deep understanding of the experience of existence. It's contributed many things, and one of them is the concept of the Ardhanarishvar. And the Ardhanarishvar is the joint manifestation of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And it teaches many, many deep understandings about the manner in which the two interplay and the manner in which the two need to be present. And I think at this time, and in the context of this country and the Western civilization that we're seated in, I think the Ardhanarishvar has a wonderful message and understanding to contribute. So I'm deeply grateful to the organizers for the opportunity to actually talk about the Ardhanarishvar. The imagery of the Ardhanarishvar, some of you may have seen, is Shiva and Shakti, half and half, in one form, united. And one of our teachings is that in every endeavor in life, the two must be fully present, must be fully honored and fully empowered to contribute their understanding and their opinion. So what I'm going to be doing today here is taking the role of the divine masculine and allowing the divine feminine to create what needs to emerge in this conversation. And I will do the minimum other than create the safe space for it. So the first point I'd like to explore with each of the panelists is the point to do with economics. So if I just pose a question, the manner in which we're going to do this is I will pose the question and then each person will be given an opportunity to share some thoughts on it. We have a Western model of civilization in which economics is very utilitarian, and it's guided by the desire for profit and the desire for creation for the purposes of greed and ownership and possession. As representatives of a tradition and also as the divine feminine incarnate today, Priyaji, if I can start with yourself, do you have any thoughts about the manner in which economics is unfolding in the Western civilization as compared to a Bharatiya perspective of how it could?
Often we talk about God in the masculine sense, like it's His grace, He's doing a great job managing the world. Have we ever heard of it's her grace, or I'm in her grace, or she's doing a great job of managing our planet? So to put that into context, the Ardhanarishvar, Ardha means half, Nari means woman, and Ishwar means God. So the energy of God itself is proclaiming that I am half feminine and half masculine. I would like to put that in a context to establish the meaning of Shiva and Shakti. We all know Lord Shiva, the renowned ascetic who sits on Mount Kailash and meditates. Also the one who is the great Nataraj dancer. So the one who experiences the ultimate stillness of meditation is the one who is able to really, totally erupt in the dance of joyfulness and life. Lord Shiva, that's his dichotomy. So Lord Shiva is known as the destroyer. Destroyer of what? We often talk about destroyer, that, the Vishnu and Shiva, Brahma, and Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, Shiva is the destroyer. The destroyer of creation? Rethink. He is the destroyer of the excesses of human nature. Whether it's your greed, your envy, your lust, when you're living from a space of compulsiveness and not consciousness, He destroys compulsiveness and compulsive habits and helps you to come to consciousness. Therefore, He is on Mount Kailash where nothing grows. Does the environment have anything in it on Mount Kailash to fuel the excesses of human nature? Nothing. Complete aridity. Therefore, he is the ascetic on the mountain. And who is his consort? His consort is Shakti. Why is that the case? What do you need to destroy? To destroy, you need energy. Destruction cannot happen without energy. If you have an atom bomb today that goes and destroys a place, what is an atom bomb? Essentially, it is an energy brought together in a certain way that we are not clearly using constructively in our world, but destruction requires energy. And Lord Shiva shows how his entire role of destroying the excesses of human nature so that we can each become our best selves is not only incomplete but impossible without Shakti, or the feminine, the female energy. Therefore, as Panditji has elucidated, Shiva and Shakti, or Purusha, which is the male energy, and Prakriti, which is the female energy, have to dance and conjoin in harmony for life as we know it, not only to thrive, but even to exist. So I think here I've probably taken more of my time, so I'll let the economics bit be answered by my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyaji. Fulfilling my role of the divine masculine is creating a safe space and protecting the boundary. Truptiji, I welcome you to have 3 minutes to share your thoughts on the economics aspect with regard to the divine feminine perspective.
Namaste all. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Shakti Rupena Sanstita Namastase, 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 Namo Namaha. So what is Shakti? Do we just consider Shakti as a strength? Not really. Shakti is a combination of strength and with the sense of Dharma. So Shakti is rightfulness of protecting something. Shakti is energy that is Devi Saraswati that imparts into education, and Shakti is also Lakshmi, Devi Lakshmi, and that is the Western world revolves around in terms of the economics, as we call it. So when we consider about Lakshmi, Lakshmiji is not just that people think about the money and this whole wrong misconception we've been fed for last 40, 50 years that you go to God, you go to Mandir and you pray to Lakshmi Narayan, so Lakshmiji, and say, God, please give me so much money and so much this and so much that if we actually give you 100 rupees of prasad. Totally and utterly, this is misconception, and we need to come out of that darkness of this understanding of Shakti, and we need to really start looking into the matters. How does the world revolve? Because when you look at economics, and when you think about our ancient system, even I remember my grandmother's time when we used to go to her village. And the vegetable man will come and he will exchange in barter system with some grain, and a woman would come with on her head. If some of you might remember it, with lots of new pots and pans, and she would shout in the street, that's her business, and we would invite her in the house, and we would give some old clothes and some new clothes, and depending on what you give, she would give you whatever the pot or a pan or whatever that gives you back. So there was no like a monetary exchange in that. Now when the whole universe or the whole Bharatiya system worked like that in previous years, the capitalism has actually killed it. But that's another subject for another day. Namaste.
Namaste, thank you so much, Truptiji. You brought it into a very nice space. You mentioned Lakshmi Devi at Diwali time, and indeed in the aartis that we all do at Diwali. We identify Lakshmi Ji as the earth, Surya Chandrama Dhyavat, she whom the sun and the moon hold in their attention and gaze at. And economics is certainly, if anything, it's the manner in which we use her resources. So thank you for bringing that point in. And I'm delighted to turn to Dr. Melissa Kapoor, who is with us today. Could you share a few moments on thoughts on the economics from the point of view of the Divine Feminine?
Absolutely, and I can probably offer a slightly different perspective because I come from a Western background, having always lived in the UK. So I recently read a really interesting research article by an epidemiologist, a research titled Western Culture, Is It the World's Greatest Health Hazard? And I found it just so interesting. To be honest, actually, what it held, the results were nothing shocking to me, like I innately knew these things, but to see it rigorously presented, I thought, yes, this is the rigorous results that tell us exactly why Bharatiya civilization is such a healthier way to live than the Western way. And the crux of the issue with Western civilization is that it places so much value on your social and your economic status, men and women. And actually, when you account for an individual's view of their economic status, how they view themselves in terms of their economic status, you'll find that that actually explains levels of depression. It explains level of suicide. It explains levels of divorce, much more than unemployment or actual amount of money you have. The richest person can be deeply depressed. So this is the view that has arisen in the West, that in true Bharatiya civilization just does not exist. And through being exposed and experiencing Bharatiya civilization for myself over the last few years, I've realized that it's awakened a new dimension, a new power in my life that I didn't even know it could exist. I have always had a lot of inner confidence, a lot of inner self-belief, but that has been taken to a whole new level, the Shakti level. A good example is when I was recently married to my husband, an Indian living in the UK. I was helping him to apply for new jobs. I was helping him to build his slide deck. I was helping him to prepare his answers for interview questions. And when he got the job, I felt intense satisfaction that I had helped him with the intellectual side of getting that job. It was only afterwards, when I was speaking to my in-laws, that I realized that I had given him so much more than that. I had given him the love, the safe space. I had given him the power and the calm to tackle the questions. And me, as the new Lakshmi in the house, I had brought in the luck. I basically had given him that prosperity that would have consequences, not just for us, but for our wider family. So I was amazed that, wow, I had all this power I didn't even know existed. I have power over my husband. I have power over our household. I have power over our wider family. And that's so much more than just limiting myself to intellectual knowledge or economic status of myself. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. It was a wonderful answer. If I can turn now just briefly to Deepikaji, who has a cultured and a creative journey to be with us today. She is, I think, an art and a museum curator, was that?
Yes. Today I'm going to use my historian hat, rather. So I think everybody gave a rather conceptual idea of economics within the feminine, with feminine ideas. I'm going to bring it back to earth because however profound and poetic and beautiful these ideas are about the fact that the world is created as part feminine and part masculine, in effect, all economic systems have been largely masculine. So as a historian, I can pretty much say that great ideas, but in practice, it's mostly very masculine ideas of how goods are acquired and traded and how power rests with money and the trading of money. Having said that, Western ideas of how, I'm going to talk about a very mundane aspect of female ownership of property in India. And as an early modern historian, I find it profoundly, people do make claims rather, oh yes, women used to hold property in India. But the idea is somehow that the ownership of property became a thing for women when Western universalism and colonial ideas of female individualness came into the country. This is completely untrue. In fact, one of the first impacts of colonial domination over the India's economic system was to take away feminine land ownership, especially when females were large estate holders. The other thing is that the normal economic system was not based on utilitarian profit. This is a capitalist input that was brought in, particularly by the East India Company and other Western trading companies. And the economic model was much more about making sure that everybody present within a particular system, when it is considered a closed system, had something to do and were getting their particular part of the entire economic enterprise, the village or the town or the kingdom. And that was not considered to be an inefficient system. When colonial terms of measurement came about economic efficiency, this was regarded to be extremely wasteful. Unfortunately, this colonial view of economic utilitarianism has continued, and we continue to look at the world in terms of GDP rather than what we are beginning to do now, which is look at it in the terms of well-being, which I understand New Zealand is going to start looking at in the future.
Thank you so much. And Bhutan as well. I think they're moving from a GDP model to a gross domestic happiness model. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to turn our attention to law. And my understanding of law in this context is it legitimizes the application of physical force. So law is the mechanism whereby we control that capacity to exert violent force. The American Constitution was actually based upon the constitution provided by the indigenous tribes, but there was one item taken out of the indigenous constitution, and that was that the chief, the commander-in-chief, was elected exclusively by the women in the tribe. And they took that little bit out and kept pretty much the vast majority of it. So given the space and the opportunity to cease control and choose a law that you would introduce on the basis of dharmic understandings, I'll ask each of you to mull that over and then perhaps share with us, given the opportunity to enact a law, make a change, what would that item, what would that individual piece of legislation be? Truptiji, you work with the Hindu Forum of Britain and you're extensively connected with the parliamentarians and giving them loving guidance in a manner in which an Indian mum can do and no one else can do. Would you like to start? Thank you.
Thank you, Jishi. When we talk about law, you mentioned one thing about like force, or the way I see law is actually upholding one's dharma, upholding one's prakriti or nature. Because if we go back to ancient times, Chanakya actually, or Guru Chanakya, wrote quite amazing amount of literature on law and how everything should be governed, because law is the governance, and which is what the Modi ji is trying to bring back into our governments and our society. When you talk about the force or law, I just want to, some of you may be aware, but one of the battles that we fought for the last 10 years or so, and we are nearing to result into achieving what we wanted, was the caste clause. And I know lots of people might say that, why do you bring it up? But it was so important. When you look at the some of the parts of India and how people change their history, recently watched a biopic on Swami Ramdev ji, and his people are Yadav. He was from Yadav Kul. And they were considered as a people from the scheduled caste, the Pichdi Jati. Now, how could, when Sri Krishna was born in the Yadav Kul, they were the people who had an amazing amount of system that ran the whole villages and how it was done. And all of a sudden, where did this idea come from? Well, it was the 1911 and the British Raj and how they divided us into and placed us into different pockets. And that was the caste clause. And how we fought about bringing out that caste clause out of becoming the law itself. It made us aware that our community is not aware of what is this caste issue. Everybody automatically assumes that you are of such and such jati or such and such varna, therefore you are of such and such caste. And the word never existed in our society. So the law of the nature is that if we have no such word as caste that is making us unequal, because our Dharma tells us that we are all equal according to our prakriti, according to our gnan, and according to our charitable work that we do, then we don't accept this word caste. And that was a huge battle. We still have to do sort of like a remaining one, but we'll tell you another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Deji. Law given or taken by Shakti, what would Shakti do with it? Melissa?
So I'm not really going to describe a law. I'm going to describe more of a policy change, and that would be to transform the education system in Bharat, to re-educate Bharat that the semblances of gender discrimination that do exist in India today, as we were just describing, they're foreign imports. They're not native to Bharat. They're either foreign imports or they arose within Bharat as a defense mechanism against the foreign invaders. And there is a lot of misunderstanding within Bharat around that. People just don't realize. They believe it is inherent to Bharat. Now, for me, it is very clear that there have been so many amazing, brave, fierce women throughout history in Bharat. Take Rampiari Gujar, a 20-year-old in the 1300s who raised an army of 40,000 brave women soldiers against the terrorist Timur. Inspired those women. Lakshmi Bai. There will be, a Rampiari Gujar in every state of India, but in Bharat, children are not taught about them. They're not in the textbooks. I think that is something that absolutely has to be changed. We can see the resurgence of women within positions of power within Bharat. Take Smriti Irani as a great example, a real Dharma champion. She has taken over that Congress stronghold of Amethi. When we consider whether there is a Shakti within Bharat and whether that is revered, you only have to look at the Indian army to know that it absolutely is. On the Kargil war fields, Kali Mata Ki Jai, Jawala Mata Ki Jai, those were the war cries heard much more than anything else. If that doesn't show that men derive their strength from Shakti, I do not know. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have somebody in the audience who has a nationalist tendency. But thank you very much for that contribution. Deepika ji.
I'm going to take, again, a very mundane and literal view. If I could change a law or make it more feminize one, then basically it would require a radical reformation of how law works and what it is for. So at the moment, law is very much geared towards a social model that relies on competition rather than collaboration. So one of the first things that I would do, if I had the capacity to do so, was to make laws that allowed you to use only those many natural resources which would be adequately divided amongst all people. This is not a call for socialism. It's a call for your environmental credits. So I'll have an environmental credit system where, irrespective of how wealthy you are, you only have that much environmental credit to spend. Because at the moment, we don't cost things according to their environmental cost. We only cost them according to how much manual labor, transport, shipping, etc. takes place. And we let the rest of the cost, which is the wider environmental impact of that particular good, let that be, it gets cancelled into the massive destruction we've been doing, we've been meeting upon this planet. So if I were to radically redo the economy, that's what I would do, an environmental credit, which would be universal, and you only got to spend your own bits. And then if you had to buy them, they would probably end up being a credit black economy, but anyway, we'll see.
Oh, what a wonderful suggestion. We shall make sure through the good offices of the Festival of Bharat that the appropriate lawmakers receive that as a piece of guidance. Thank you so much for that. It's just an interesting aside. You mentioned that many of the traditions in India have been imported or have been imposed. I spent a little bit of time at one of the museums in Allahabad, which the name is also an imposition. And an aged curator shared with me that the reason that the vast majority of weddings in North India are conducted at night time isn't because of astrological or astronomical considerations. It was because people used to kidnap girls at a time when they became of marriageable age. So it was all done undercover. And even to this day, people are still conducting weddings at 3 a.m. in India, surrounded by quilts in freezing cold weather. So that is a part of the decolonization process that we still have to go through. Thank you very much for your contributions on that, and I'm delighted to say that we are following the timetable as well, which I think is a great achievement in a dance of Shiva and Shakti. So yes, indeed, if you wish to, you have 2 minutes. We're ahead of schedule.
So I would like to say that I do not believe that men and women are equal. I do not believe that any two of us on this planet are equal. We're not meant to be equal. We're meant to be different. But are we equal in the dignity that is accorded to us and the dignity of self and consciousness that is us? Yes. I would like to see law, if it's a fundamental way of how we are governed, a route map, a road map, to reflect the fact that dignity of human beings and human consciousness overrides everything else. Nationality, creed, ethnicity, religion, gender, etc. There is a dignity in every human being, irrespective of every man-made barrier we have created, that we ought to first recognize and salute in ourselves and then in others. That is essentially what Namaste also says.
Thank you very much for that spontaneous creativity. Appreciate it. So I'm going to turn to the last of our subjects, which is probably the most contentious. In different traditions, we have an immediate separation and an immediate rebalancing of the equality between the masculine divine and the masculine feminine. And at this moment in time, we have traditions which are overtly destructively masculine. The subject is religion. And I'm going to ask the question, again, given a divine capacity to apply change, in the religious dimension, what do you think that our understanding of the divine feminine can possibly contribute to make the world a more balanced and a happier place? So I'm going to go against the flow now and go counterclockwise and turn to Deepika-ji, if you'd like to share some thoughts. And you actually have 4 minutes, if you wish to use all of your time.
That is a good question. As someone who was also brought up with Western traditions of knowledge, so I have had to go through a vast unlearning process. So one of the first things that I had to unlearn was the nature of the female presence within the I'm going to call them scriptural for are the purposes of this talk, but as you know, Hindu Dharma doesn't have scriptures. So was first of all reading these texts through translations or through the very damaging way in which non-Indian, non-practitioners read these texts. One is bound to believe that there is a bias towards the Purush, and which leaves out the feminine. And it's only after, 10 years of this text study that I realized that the Purush applies to females as well as males. And that's one of the fundamental misunderstandings which should not occur with any access to these kind of texts. So and also in my study of religion, how it applies to life in early modern India, for example, we're not a scriptural religion, or we're not a scriptural dharma. It is about practice of certain principles, which are dharmic principles. And so the pandit or the jyotish or the purohit plays a minimal and nominal role in how these, even these very large anushthan, for example, are carried out in the royal arena, which is my area of expertise. One realizes that I would not be able to correct it more than it has already been corrected in practice by the pre-colonial era. After that, Hinduism gets defined in a terrifying way by the way, it's literally defined through a Christian Protestant lens in a foreign language, and it becomes this unidentifiable thing. So our challenge now is to undo those epistemic violences upon it. Is that my 4 minutes?
Wonderful. That's an excellent start. I think we're away. And I would encourage everyone to be as frank and as direct as you feel the need to be. Political correctness has its place, but it's not fundamentally part of the Dharmic tradition either. So be robustly open in any remarks that you have to say. Not at all. It was very restrained. Please, Felicity.
So it's very obvious to me that the very strongest presence of feminine within any religion, and I actually feel it's a disservice to call Hinduism a religion, but it is in Hinduism. Anyone who tells you otherwise, they just don't understand what Hinduism is. And I feel that the other world religions could learn so much from Hinduism. They could learn that the male and the female binary genders, they do not map onto binary and separate and discrete masculine and feminine qualities and characteristics, which actually, as a Westerner, that's what I see it as in the West. If a woman, if she is to be feminine, she has to be meek and mild. Weak, really. Only men can be strong. If a woman in the West is, or in some other religions, is strong, she's considered bossy or bitchy or hysterical. Hinduism, on the other hand, it sees a spectrum of qualities, of characteristics that merge across masculine and feminine, and that healthy individuals, rounded individuals, have qualities that are across that spectrum and are dictated by the situation in which they are. We'll take Ma Durga as a great example. So on the nights of Navratri, Dussehra, we see Ma Durga in all her various forms, her different avatars. And I love each evening looking up what are the characteristics for Ma Durga for that day. And each day I feel like, yes, I resonate with that quality. Yes, I resonate with that one. Some days I'm fierce and protective. Some days I'm happy and I'm laughing. Some days I'm peaceful and I'm calm. Because I'm a balanced human being. That's how any balanced man or woman should be. And I feel that the other world religions could learn so much from that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Juktiji, would you like to share a comment? And I know that you will be unrestrained when it comes to referring to the desert cults.
So when we talk about women and education, in ancient time, education was for everyone. Those who have read the Valmiki Ramayana will know very clearly that Mata Kaushalya had a daughter called Shanta, and she was very well educated. So was Mata Sitaji. All 32 Vidya that we call, different 32 subjects. She was expert in that. This is before her marriage to Lord Rama. She actually went out of Janakpuri. Her father said to her that go out in the world and learn what the common people are doing. Learn any other Vidya that you can have that you can't have from your guru. We look at Arundhati, we look at Lopamudra, and when we talk about mathematics, how many of you actually know Lalita? Lalita was the lady who was expert in Ankaganit or arithmetic. And this is in ancient times. We're not talking about last 1,000 years. Jhansi Ki Rani, the recent example that we all know, she was quite expert in all the arm vidya, armories, and everything else. Dancing, music, everything else. So we were not bad by learning all these things. And unfortunately, we had to change our ways. So giving vidya, giving education to girl child then went underground. And we still have got those traditions where many places, particularly in Rajasthan and certain part of Madhya Pradesh, that women have that tradition. And when you look at it, there is a temple in Rajasthan which has been in continuous practice over 5,000 years. And there the priest, the family, the girl child, and the man, they both learn about all the Vidyas. Now, when we come back to modern days, I have been so lucky to be raised in Sardar Patel University, the town where my father was a lecturer. And he did his master's in English first, and then he did his master's in history and Sanskrit. And that's where we had a chance to read quite a lots of stuff on the modern history. So when you look at the modern history, there is no, in modern history, the women were sort of like, there were lots of males in the first university in Madras, where my grandfather went to. But when I was studying in Sardar Patel University, almost more than half were the women teachers, and we looked at them as like our role models. In ancient time, women were initiated as well, as all of you know, with the Janoi. And modern times, we all forget that. We only understood that only the men wore the Janoi, which wasn't quite. And there are names for different kind of women who can have different kind of knowledge or studies. So coming back to modern times, when I came to England, I was quite surprised actually. Went to find a job, and the job center said to me that, "What is your education?" And I said, "I'm a bachelor in engineering. I have civil engineering." "What is that?" And they said to me that just go and learn typing and start finding an admin job. And I was so shocked. I thought, hang on a minute, I've come to London. This is in 1977. And these people are, the career center is telling me that even they don't know what civil engineering is. So it was quite lots of things that I've come across in my career where people look at a woman. Most of the people always thought that me being Indian woman or from Bharat or from Indian subcontinent, that I will be someone's secretary or I'll be someone's PA. And when you start talking about engineering and lots of other things, and they look at you and they still can't believe it, to the point that some men would actually say from the host community that I should be at home at the kitchen sink and not working at all, because that's my role is, and that's where the Indian women should be. They also believe, this is going back in 77, so some of you might not have experienced that society at all. They would actually say that, what is you're Hindu? Yeah, in your religion, you learn to be putting your hand on the fire because you have a sati system. And I thought, what is sati system? We never had a sati system. That was the Middle Ages, where women had to protect themselves from being abducted, from being taken into the harems. We had a system where we protected ourselves. We evolved a system where we didn't want to be slaves of other people. But that does not mean that it's inherent in us to be a sati. Because women in those days, in ancient times, actually become sadhvis. They gave up everything, even if they had families and husbands. After 75, they would walk off all the Maya, and they would join the Sangh, and they would walk to Kashi, and they would live rest of their life in Kashi. So this is how colorful tapestry of our Dharma is, and I think we should keep those colors of tapestry alive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Truptiji.
Hi, I'll keep this one really short.
I'm so grateful.
I'll look at, to exemplify how women or the feminine energy is placed in religion. And since Hinduism is the religion of the day, I will cite an example from that. We all know Lord Krishna, who is the reincarnation of Lord Vishnu, and whose sermon to the warrior Arjuna forms the holy text of the Hindus, which is the Gita. So all those who know Lord Krishna, or who worship Lord Krishna, or who are aware of worshipping Lord Krishna, what do you say? Do you say Radhe Krishna or Krishna Radhe? Radhe Krishna. I'll just leave that as food for thought with you. How we are treating women is really a product and a factor of our misrepresentation of social cultural norms. But as far as the fundamentals of how the religious energy looks at it, I will leave you with food for thought. Radhe Krishna.
Well, no, thank you so much for that. The only response to that must be Radhe Radhe, I believe. But Ji, would you like to add a final thought on this issue?
I just had a caveat on the nature of sati. Sati is often interpreted as a medieval practice, but if you read the Srimad Mahabhagavad Puran, sati, and read the actual description and not read the English translations, please, that's really essential. You find that the actual setting of fire of Sati is Swayambhu. She sets herself on fire using yogic Agni. And that is something that is definitely not. So it's the destruction of the body because it is related to Daksh, and Daksh has insulted the nature of Shiv. And this misunderstanding of Sati being someone chucking herself into a yagnik fire or something else is also a colonial translation of these practices in Bengal and of post-colonial Indian studies of colonial records. I am currently looking at pre-colonial records of sati practice in Rajasthan, so which nobody has looked at, frankly. So it's going to redefine how we think about the practice. But I just wanted to put it out there that sati, from no meaning has it ever had a woman chucking herself into a fire.
Thank you so much for that, Deepika ji. So that was the last of the items that I wanted to cover. But just in closing, I'm reminded of the purity of vision that Nari Shakti can bring to many contexts. Lord Hastings invited his niece to visit him when he was in India. And she wrote, Emily her name was, she wrote some letters back to her friends and sisters in the UK. And she wrote, one remark she wrote which has stayed with me, she wrote, "It's beastly how we treat these people. Why don't they just behead us and kill us and have done with it?" Now she managed to see the situation of what was happening in India with a clarity that the whole colonial edifice was completely unable to perceive. And I think the learning that we all should take home is that when the dance is being conducted in all of those spaces, especially in the space of religion and education, and when both participants are engaged in the dance, then it generates an unbelievably creative power. But when they are separated either within us or indeed in our relationships, or indeed in our environments and our structures, then violence, fear and suffering seem to manifest. And one thing is self-evident. As a person who grew up blessed with 4 sisters and being an only son, I do recognize that probably the biggest contribution that the divine masculine can make is to get out of the way and allow the divine feminine to manifest. On that note, I'd just like to thank everybody on the panel for contributing inspiring and completely spontaneous responses. So thank you very much to Priyaji and Truptiji and Melissaji and indeed Deepikaji. Thank you very much.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Citti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.